and the small places. I'd rather go. It is.
What's that? Let's take a photo.
This restaurant's new.
That's it.
This was a real estate office. And before that it was a garage. And there's an apartment up there.
That's the theme, right?
That's the theme, that's right. It was a garage.
No, you were the school. We were remarking about how much better outfitted the schools are coming down here than they are in Orlando.
They did price out your district, but when we see the Juwan schools, because in Orlando, it's just all those portables everywhere.
We have, Suffolk has right many portables because that's how you handle growth. You can't get taxpayers to build schools in anticipation of growth. You've got to grow and prove that the growth is there by having X number of portable units, and then that's how you get your money. It's
bad.
It's too bad, but it's the way it is. Well then, Brinkley, I want to ask, where was Ralph in all of this? Because he was a little fella.
Ralph lived at our house until he married Grace. And I remember he brought her there for the bridal dinner, and how much Vera helped with that. And of course the washstand was that pump. We had a pump on the porch. And there was a big shelf with the wash bowls and a towel on the wall. And I remember they spent their first wedding night in the guest room. And the next morning, Grace was always a little bit flaky. Is that confirmed by all who know her?
Did you know her? You didn't know Grace.
First young lady?
You picked her from Grace?
I guess I did. They were perfect for each other.
They were.
They were ideal, this couple, because nobody else in the world could have gotten along with either one of them. But they were absolutely...
They loved each other.
They loved each other dearly. They took care of each other. They supported each other. But they were two of the strangest people.
Rat? Isn't that right, Rat? How did you say it? Isn't that right, Rat?
Isn't that right, Ralph?
Yeah.
Rafe.
Well, I want to know why Ralph was the way he is, or was. What made him so crazy? What made him march and say he was going to kill people? What made him, did he moonshine?
Aren't you familiar with Southern bigots?
Well, who was he going to kill?
I didn't know he was going to kill anybody. I don't know that.
Well, I just remember that's from my staying at their house. And he
I've heard your story, and that's
night.
very strange. I don't know about that. He must have been drunk.
Was he old?
Well, he was old and
I think he was drunk.
He was probably drunk.
Probably.
well, he would go down and get moonshine every day. Is what Grace said. This is what the men do. He's going to go on down the street.
And that was okay with her.
And that was okay. That's right. Well, one time he got upset with somebody at Rancher and Riddick's, and he went home and got his gun and said he was going to shoot whoever it was. So he did have, but because the moonshine probably helped on that.
Yeah.
But why was he? I mean,
Yeah, where
was he really limited? I mean, was he?
Yes, I think he was limited. Certainly. Yes,
And what about Albert?
the same.
Same.
And yet they had totally different genes.
Wasn't Albert the one you took canned food to?
Yes. Albert never married, right? Never married. He was just kind of a homeless guy, right?
What?
A homeless guy.
A poor person. He had a place to live. He had a place to live in the beginning. He inherited the house.
Right.
Did he inherit everything?
everything. Wow. And you know the reason for that.
No. Except I know that sons always had a greater claim.
Very much so. It's interesting to me that, I think I told you this, that my mother kept what money she had in a mayonnaise jar or fruit jar in the closet. And she thought nobody knew, but of course I knew everything. I never did steal any of it. Never took it. But she would pretend that she was absolutely penniless until Saturday night came when Albert wanted to go to Edenton to out to dinner or a movie. And then that top got screwed off the jar. And she would hand him money for that. But she never had money for the daughters. Because women didn't need anything.
So that was just for his fun, or did she hope that he would meet a woman and settle down? Was she looking
I think
for
he
him to-
probably met
Because he wanted it.
He probably met lots of women, didn't he? I think women were part of his.
He was a womanizer?
He was womanizer. He never needed a woman that he didn't have one. May I put it that way?
And the story,
Women were drawn to him.
A certain class of women were available. But don't put us all.
Some women were drawn to him.
You enjoyed it.
well, how did he and your daddy get along? Or did they just
Poorly.
Did they fight?
Not physically.
But verbally?
They just, my father ignored everybody.
He just ignored everybody?
He just ignored everybody.
Did he ignore his wife?
They didn't sleep. They called each other Miss Susie, and she called him Mr. Kraft from the day they were married, and never used anything other than the formal address. I slept with my mother for the first 12 years of my life, and I do remember his coming to the bed one time.
Oh, you were in?
Education at a very early age.
That's child abuse, isn't it?
There's all kinds of child abuse. You don't ever have to mean a lot more than hitting and beating.
So did he keep the store then? And did he make a living off of this store?
No, it failed. He never made a living doing anything.
Then what did he do? Just sit around and
Farmed.
He farmed. Small farm.
They're fast eaters.
How did you spend your days as a child? I've thought about that. What did you all do as children?
In the summertime, we worked in the garden. We never were called upon to work in the fields like some women were during the Depression, chopping cotton and
You didn't do that.
planting potatoes. We were never required to do that. But we did work in the garden, the vegetable garden. We swept the yard.
What was the idea of sweeping the yard? Because I know that that's a southern thing that, I know the roots of that from African Americans, but what was it, why did you sweep the yard?
Sweep the leaves and sticks. Same thing I sweep the yard for now. Instead of raking, they call it sweeping.
Oh, but it was a raking. You didn't use a broom, did you? Or did you use a rake?
Well, we used a broom where there was not grass.
So old were you when grandmother became blind?
5.
You were 5. So mother was 9.
That's right. 9? Mother would have been 9. You were 5.
Older than that.
No, our
4
mother.
years older. Kay. Kay was 9.
Oh, your mother.
Yeah, our mother.
She's 4 years older than you, right?
How old was she when she became blind?
Your mother.
How old was she when she...
48.
Wow. Was it glaucoma? Or
Cataracts.
cataracts? And I guess they couldn't operate on cataracts at that time, or?
She was taken to one eye doctor in Suffolk. And I think that was probably before cataracts were even being removed. And so an eye doctor would see cataracts and say, can't do anything about it. Today, of course, it would be as easy as taking off mine.
Well, I remember Mother talking about after she became blind having to do a lot of the cooking.
Sure.
And so when you had guests, you had to prepare meals for all those people.
And my father was, he was one of the finest religious hypocrites I've ever known.
He went to hypocrite.
Religious hypocrite. They belonged to 2 different churches. They were both Baptist, but they didn't even belong to the same church. Anyway, because we didn't have a car, we didn't get to church anyway. But you remember the big family Bibles about that thick? It was on a table in the parlor. And my father had a lap board. Do you remember lap boards? Have you ever heard of a lap board? It was a board about that long with an oval cut in one side, and you laid that across the arms of your chair and put your book on the lap board to read. So every Sunday morning, my father took a bath once a week on Saturday nights and changed underwear and had one suit of clothes which he would put on Sunday mornings, suit and tie, dress up as if he were going to church. But instead he took the family Bible, put it on the lap board, and spent the day reading scripture. And therefore said Sunday is the day of rest. You may not work on Sundays. We were not allowed to go to the Chorn River to swim. We weren't allowed even to cut, to sew. But we could stay in the kitchen cooking the best meal of the week for him to enjoy. And the best meal of the week in those days was chicken. We didn't have chicken but once a week. And it was usually chicken or sometimes ham, but every week it was that 3 or 4 layer cake that had to be made on Sundays.
Chocolate, coconut.
Right. And so we spent Sundays cooking food.
Did he read out loud, or did he just read to himself?
He read to himself, but his lips moved and his finger traced the line.
So he was quite literate.
He never read anything but the Bible and some farm publications. Yes, he could read.
How far did he go in school? Third, fourth, probably 7?
4, something like that.
Yeah.
4th or 5th, I would guess.
And how about Miss Susie?
Same thing.
Did she read to you? Well, not after she was blind. Aunt Grace said that she would put strings through the house so that she could get around
And outside also.
to the clothesline. And that's how she maneuvered around.
Never complained. It was her lot.
So was she sort of a martyr?
I think she was, but then, martyrdom is sometimes chosen.
Interesting to see how far grand school, how far is Alma to fall? Yeah.
They went to trade school. Both of you did, so. Grandma and Grandpa Goranson went to
How far
trade
they went
school.
in school?
He was apprenticed in Sweden as a bass cutter
So fairly far.
at the age of 12. And Grandma's education was totally domestic. How to sew, how to knit, how to
Out
cook,
of school, very far.
the housekeeping arts.
But you all went to school, right? Or
Oh,
did you?
yeah, they,
So everybody in the family went to school?
But
High
not
school?
Ralph. Ralph didn't finish high school, did he?
I don't think Ralph did.
Just you and Kay and Vera. Were there,
I
was
think
there
Albert finished high school.
Albert did? Is he the embezzler?
He wasn't the
No, he
embezzler.
wasn't the embezzler. He was the gambler, though.
That's how he lost the house.
In a poker game, do you think? Was he
No.
betting on
No,
the cockfights,
but
or?
he needed money, yes.
and did he lose it a bit at the time, or it was, and the furniture, and a bit at the
When
time?
his girlfriends took the furniture. That was the payoff sometimes, I think. He's from
It probably was.
Okay.
Sure, you can have this bed if you'll sleep in it with me.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Either that or a quarter.
Maybe there was some quarters left in the mayonnaise jar. So how did Miss Susie get any money? Did your father give her money to run the household? And she said it was all used up. I used it for the flour and the sugar, and
And she was a hoarder.
she was.
She was a hoarder. That closet was like a bank. There would be pounds and pounds of sugar, and
That was an important thing to have, what
sugar was precious. And so there would be sacks of sugar stored in the closet with her fruit jar of money. There were two closets in her bedroom. One was for clothes and the other one was for treasures.
was the bank.
So sugar in the bedroom closet. But that was during the Depression, right?
That's right.
So she had what she needed to get through the Depression. She felt probably pretty rich or secure.
And we never had oranges and bananas and grapes and nuts except at Christmas. And at Christmas time, she would put those bags in the closet too. And nobody was supposed to go in there. She would take one out once in a while and give it to you. But
Care for any more water, more tea? What else is there? Dessert going?
Well, I just want to hear about them. We have to look at the case, right?
We have a cream caramel.
I guess I'll have a cup of coffee.
are you going to the cemetery or not?
I don't need to have it.
Well, on to the cemetery.
You can cut off and go to Hershford and pick up 17.
Oh, don't worry about it. We'll find our own way. Yeah. Now that I'm in Edenton, I'm gonna spend some time in Edenton. Yeah, look around.
The information book.
Oh, thank you, Pat.
I really do. And my granddaughter came 2 or 3 weeks ago and she sat down and read it from cover to cover.
Really?
Yes.
That's very good. How old is she?
11.
Excellent.
She reads all the time.
Well, I'm really glad if children are enjoying
Oh,
it.
yes.
That's great.
That's the Uncle Monday? I guess that's the only one.
That's mostly like.
Great.
Yeah, I read a few stories and it was fun. I enjoyed it. She just
Pictures
came
are
in
nice,
yesterday, so she
Yeah.
picked it up. The illustrations are wonderful.
The illustrations are, yes, are sad. That
Really
is a
sad.
bittersweet.
It is very bittersweet that she didn't even see the book.
Oh, really? Really?
Kitty, the illustrator, died before the book.
Right before, about a month before it came out.
Right. In fact, the cover is not the cover that was supposed to be on the book. She went to the hospital and called me and said, Kristin, I can't lift my arms. Rick is taking me to the hospital, but he's also taking my artwork, and I've talked to the doctor about it. I'm late on the cover, but I will do the cover. I just need to rest in the hospital, and we will get the cover done. And then she just went and got really, really sick, and her daughter and I had to go in to find another illustration, which was not the illustration that she wanted that's on the cover. But when we told her that we had just made that decision and that she needed to get well, then the pressure was lifted off of her, I think. But then she died right after that. So it is bittersweet for her family, especially. It was, and also because illustrating a children's book was what she wanted to do her entire life. And that book came out of the fact that she had this gallery that closed because she couldn't afford to rent
I read all
anymore.
that.
Yeah. She said, I said to her, well, if you could do anything you wanted to do, Kitty, what would you do? And she said, I'd illustrate a children's book. I said, so let's do it. Yeah. So, yeah, she was an excellent illustrator. She worked all through that, doing those pictures through cancer treatment. So it was tough going.
I have a feeling this restaurant's going to be a success. You know, they come and go in Edenton. They do. Drum Tree is closed, the Dram Tree. And the one that used to be Boswell's is vacant now. So,
They have a photo of one of the gargoyles on Notre Dame men's bathroom for $125. It's not even a really good photo.
the information center for Edenton is on Broad Street. It's to the left as you came in. Did you notice the sign?
We did. So did you come into town sometimes as a child? Did somebody take you into town, and was this the big thing to do?
Well, doctors made house calls, so you didn't have to. In fact, I was delivered at home for $25.
By a doctor, not a
By a
midwife.
doctor. And the interesting thing is I was born December 7th, 1920. So one day I was at the courthouse and I thought I'd look up my birth certificate, and it was not in the 1920 book. So I said to the clerk that it wasn't in the book, and she said, well, you know, doctors were sometimes behind time in turning in the birth certificates. She said, let's look at 21. And there it was in the 1921 book, but it was dated 20. But the doctor, they filed them according to the time they got them. And there's my birth certificate with no name. It just says, baby girl Kraft.
Did she not name you for a while?
Mabel ever.
Now, where did your Mabel come from?
I've wondered where Mabel came
Yeah, where is that Mabel?
I can tell you.
It came out of the blue?
and Carrie.
In that Mantio book, you read about the Evans family. There were 5 Evans brothers, and 4 of them went to Mantio.
Exactly.
And the other one, Zach Evans, stayed on Route 32 and built the best house in the county for himself there. And he had a sawmill business across the road. That was the brother of the Mantio Evans. He had many children. One of them was Mabel. His first wife died, and then he married a woman, and he had just one son, and his one son married his stepmother's sister. So, you know,
again, he married what?
his stepmother's sister. My God. So anyway, that was Warner and Marguerite. But, you know, at that time, there was a strata of society also, and the Evans family were at the absolute top. Zechariah and his family. And I'm sure that, and they were distant relatives of ours. That church that you passed is Evans Methodist Church, used to be. And that was started by one of my ancestors who was a Methodist minister named Evans.
And he was Zachariah.
He was Zachariah, the minister Zachariah.
No, not the minister.
Yes, he was.
It's in the...
Was he Zechariah also?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
it's in John's, yeah.
Is it?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, anyway, that has nothing to do with, but the Evans family they were absolutely elite.
They're top of the...
They were leaders of the community. And I'm quite sure I was named for that, Mabel Evans. And they are the same as the Matteo family, which
I wondered if they were. But Zachariah, who started that church, was your mother's great-grandfather. And in fact, I have an article that was in the North Carolina paper just not recently, and I copied it because that church is now a black church. It's just recently been bought by a black
I
congregation.
had that article too.
Did it?
Belva Bunch gave it to me.
Oh, okay. And it said that, don't let me forget to give you a copy of the other stuff. It said that it was started by the Reverend Zachariah Evans in 1824 for his family and friends. And that it was the first church in Shoal County to allow the slaves to worship
You're kidding. So Zachariah did that.
So Zachariah did that.
Wow. Well, that's impressive. Isn't it nice to hear something good?
Yeah, I thought that was really. So that was, let's see, our grandmother's great-grandfather, your great-great-grandfather, our great-great-great-grandfather.
Right. Yeah. Wouldn't it be great to get a picture of him? I guess nobody has pictures. Did your family have pictures, family pictures? Did Albert get all those too?
I have some.
You do? You should share some of that. Do you have some that
She has no.
She showed up. At luncheon.
They're in the, that's right, they're in the chest.
Remember she had that ladies' luncheon? Yeah, I wasn't there.
She wasn't there, right. But you do have pictures of some of your uncles, maybe, grandmother's brothers.
Some of them served in World War I, and I have their pictures as soldiers.
Do you have that marked carefully on the pictures, who they are?
Probably not.
You need to do that. I think a lot of them were marked.
But I wondered if there were a picture of Zachariah somewhere too, but it said in that article that information about that, there wasn't a lot of information about that church. In other words, they didn't keep good records. You know, sometimes churches would have pictures of the founding minister or some such thing.
Yeah.
But in 1824, it had to have been a sketch.
So was he a minister, or was he
He
just...
was a minister.
But how was he a minister? Did he just decide he was a minister? Did he go to yeah, how did you get to be a minister then? Read a lot of the Bible and say that God put his hand on you, or was there some kind of training that he went through?
I have a feeling that in Shoal County, there would be, it's more likely that he
You had it.
Was, had a call. Yeah, that's what it was. We had a calling. When we go back towards Cisco Road, on the right, is the Evans house there? Whose house is that? That one with the columns?
That's the Evans house.
That's the Evans
And that's the house I nearly bought. Last year, may have been year before last, the last of the Evans women, her name was Helen Evans, and she had never married. She was the last of the family living there. And the only descendants she has, since she had no children, were her two nieces, and I know them. I went to school with them. So they came and had her admitted to a nursing home in Edenton and turned over the house to the National Preservation Society to sell. And Melba, my friend who lives here, called me and said the Zach Evans house is up for sale. And she said, Mary Windland, who now lives in New York, is there sorting out the contents. And Melba had stopped by, and because she plays the piano, she was very interested in a pile of music that she saw.
Sheet music and that sort of thing.
And they gave her the whole stock of music and said that they were disposing of everything there. Well, the next day I went down. I went to look at the house, and it is a magnificent southern house. It is 3 stories with carved mahogany banisters up to the 3rd floor. And the 3rd floor is finished beautifully. It was in absolutely deplorable condition. The only thing they could say was that it is livable. But it had been bought by the National Preservation Society. And the person who bought it would have to restore it to their specification, which was exactly in its original form. And so the screened-in porch, the screen was sagging, you could see